turns out we were right and wrong at the same darn time about Seth Jarvis playing hurt during the postseason. I had a feeling we'd learn after the season that Jarvis was playing hurt during the postseason, particularly in the Rangers series. What I didn't think we'd learn is that he basically played 75 games hurt this season and was so darn talented and developed so much that we didn't notice until the last 4 or 5 games of the season. Seth Jarvis, during his exit interviews, talked about the injuries that he played through this season. This is what it sounded like.
About probably 15 games in, I tore my labrum and rotator cuff in my right shoulder and just kind of dealt with it, sliding in and out a lot. So that little jacket helped. And so the last half of the year wearing that made it pretty easy. It slid out a few times again. And then I broke my finger in the Islander series. And that was just more annoying. You shoot it up and it gets all numb and gross and bloody. But the shoulder wasn't fun to deal with.
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. I actually, when we were talking about what could have happened in the Rangers, I was like, if it's like a labrum, that's so painful. Just unbelievable that he was just gutting it out for that series. Mm-hmm. I said that out loud. Since the 15th game of the season.
Dude basically played 80 games with that.
One of the toughest teammates I ever had his shoulder sliding in and out. And when he had that same thing, the sleeve that he talked about back then, back when I played, it looked like a torture device. It was all like leather with real tough straps, and and it was unbelievably painful. And every once in a while it would slide out, and he'd run to the bench, and either he'd pop it back in or the trainers would slide it back in, and he would scream and he'd bite a towel, and then he'd go back out there, and I would just look at him like, good thing this is happening to you, bud.
Yeah,
because if it were me, we might just be sitting there. And I like to think of myself as a tough guy. And guess what? That's not professional hockey we were playing. That's not an undersized professional hockey player getting consistently targeted and put into the boards as often as Seth Jarvis was all year. That is an unbelievable story.
Yeah, when he said that, he was asked that right at the very beginning of his exit interview. He was like, all right, Seth, what were you dealing with? And then he just came out and said it. We're all like, whoa, 15 games into the year you were dealing with that? We thought it was like, okay, maybe like early in the Islanders series or like late in the season, something like that. It's just like, oh, you played the whole season. Oh, and you scored over 30. Oh, got it.
I have to imagine he knew like I don't know, the Beatles when they have like come together and they're just like waiting to play it. Like he had to know like, oh, I'm about to blow these people's minds, right? Like walking into his exit interview, wait till you see what I'm about to drop on you. And then it's a shoulder injury that had been bothering him all year. Rod Brind'Amour talked about how there's even another level Seth Jarvis can get to.
Yeah, he's had a good year. What I like about Seth is he's getting better, and he's willing to get better, and you just see the progression. And I think there's still another level for him to get to, and so that's a real bright spot for this organization.
Yeah, I'd say there's another level to get to.
Jarvis said levels when asked about it.
All right, that's fine.
Plural.
We can talk size of levels, right? It's either one level that's 100 feet or 7 levels that are, do the math, 13 feet each. I would say, yeah, there's a level that's called not having your shoulder jacked up and being able to play. He scored 33 goals with the jacked up shoulder. What's the conversion rate on that? Is every jacked up shoulder worth 1.5 non-jacked up? Are we looking at a 45 goal season?
Maybe like a 1.2 ratio.
All right, so we're up around 40.
Yeah.
Don Waddell, the GM, on Seth Jarvis playing through the injury.
He is something else. I mean, we watch how he plays. I mean, forget about his status of his size. If he's got a chance to go get that puck, it doesn't matter who's going to take him out. He's going to get it first. Every game he just amazes me. He's got big kahunas there. So he's a guy that you want to continue to build your team around. That's for sure.
Kahunas.
Mm-hmm. Now, Don didn't want to praise him too much because he's got a contract. He kind of joked about that. Jarvis got a contract negotiation coming up here.
Well, let's. This is how much he gets. A lot.
Yeah.
You build around Seth Jarvis. For the reasons of he's a really good player, 33 goals, 30-plus assists. He fits in well with multiple lines that you already have assembled. But you want your cornerstones. Like, this is the hard part, right? I actually was just listening to a podcast with a college coach, and I didn't even know the college coach. He's some D2 football coach. And he was talking about naming captains. And he goes, people want to think that, like, anyone could be a captain. He's like, you do need a little – he called it street cred. And what that meant was you have to be a good player, right? I don't care if you are, a third stringer, but you're a fourth-year player and you've done everything right and you work your tail off and you are vocal in practice and you grab and bring guys along. Like, you can't really be a captain if you're not a player. And then on top of the other side of that was you have to do everything right. And it's the golden opportunities when you find the mesh, right? When one of your best players also very obviously does everything right and shows up every day and puts it all on the line. You build around Seth Jarvis because he is a great player and a tone setter for the injury reason. Right? He doesn't have to ask anyone on that team as a leader to do anything that he wouldn't do himself because he just proved he'll do just about anything himself to help the team. You need me out there because, there is a risk there. You play hurt, you play bad, that affects your money, right? You play hurt, you play bad, that affects your future. He played hurt and played well, but there's no guarantee that was going to happen, right? Getting his hands shot up for the postseason. I was sitting here saying, what happened to Jarvie? Hadn't scored a point since game 1. We were going into game 6. He was one of my players that needed to step up. Turns out he was playing with a jacked up shoulder, labrum, and rotator cuff, and was getting shots into his hand for a broken finger, and was out there skating valiantly, still on the ice, still filling his shifts, still doing what he did, and he came away with a goal in Game 6.
Still impactful.
He revealed this season as a 22-year-old, by the way, that doesn't turn 23 until next February, that you can trust him as a cornerstone of your franchise. So do you know why I don't think Don Waddell was actually that worried about praising him so openly, knowing that he had a contract coming up? Because Don Waddell knew that Seth had all of the leverage anyway.
Yeah.
He's like, we all watched it, right? I could sit up here and say, well, he needs to do this and needs to do that. It's not like his agent and Seth are going to come in like, well, you're right on that one. He didn't have that great a season. Like, no, it's one of the more openly impressive seasons on this team this year. And then to add on the degree of difficulty that he did so with some pretty serious injuries, almost the entire season. Pretty darn impressive.
And he also was finished 8th in Selke voting. First, the Selke Award in the NHL is voted for the best defensive forward. Jordan Staal finished 2nd in the entire NHL in that category. Seth Jarvis finished 8th. And Sebastian Aho finished 11th.
I would love to see how many are more svelte than 5'10", 175 on that list.
Yeah.
Because that's, again, giving your body up. And we've talked about it, right? He blocked shots with the palm of his hand this year. He gave up his body on multiple times. He back checks. He forward checks. He does. It's part of. I actually think this is something that Rod Brind'Amour is going to have to become a little bit more okay with in the coming years, playing younger guys. Because it seems like anytime there's a decision on like who's going to get the minutes, Rod likes to lean veteran, and he's not the only coach to do that. And he played long into his career, and he probably feels like, gosh, the stuff I knew 10, 15 years into my career, there's no way a 22-year-old can be as good as these older guys. Do you realize how good and how dependable Seth Jarvis has to be that Rod trusts him to do all of the things that he does and be on the ice as often as he is and be in the special teams like he is? And I mean, old soul, young personality is kind of the way you have to think of Seth Jarvis, because he's goofy on the Jumbotron in between periods, but then when he's playing those minutes and on those special teams, Rod Brind'Amour is like, I see a 34-year-old in there somewhere.